Frank Tenpenny in GTA San Andreas plays the role of the main antagonist. The main antagonist. He's behind all the mess that we witness as CJ during the game's story. At some point, a sneaky peeky top G plan formed in Frankie's head. The operation that involved the street gangs of Los Santos selling crack in the city gave him power, just what the doctor ordered. At first, Tenpenny was just the next rookie. However, over the years, his determination allowed him to work his way up in the ranks of the Los Santos Police Department. Eventually, he became the leader of the Crash unit. Crash was a police unit which had as an objective to stop the gangsters from openly mashing each other up on the streets in broad daylight, which essentially was happening every day in Los Santos. Tenpenny was working with another policeman, that is, Eddie Pulaski. Over time, they were joined by the current world record holder for the longest piss take in the history of mankind, Jimmy Hernandez.
Hey Hernandez, you gonna piss all day?
Who, by the way, will play a vital role later in the story. Back to Tenpenny though. The policeman, in spite of appearances, was doing a decent job. Obviously, not because he cared about the safety of civilians. He just saw potential benefits for himself in all this. Tenpenny was restraining ambitions of the local street gangs. He was doing it in a very effective way. If one tribe, for example the Ballas, grew stronger, Tenpenny would drop some sensitive info about them to the other gangs right away, so that the other gangs can quickly clip the wings of the developing tribe. Why's that? Well, all these measures were done to avoid a situation in which one gang has a big advantage over the rest, so they don't try to kill all the weaker gangs off. It's pretty logical. If one gang gets too far ahead, they would want to attack the rest in order to gain more turf and influence. So in this way, Tenpenny, without getting his hands dirty and without putting his life on the line, was fulfilling his duties for Crash. However, that cheeky bastard had yet another vile idea in the back of his mind that he was consistently implementing step by step. This plan obviously was supposed to make a whole lot of cash for the policeman. At some point, a perfect opportunity for Tenpenny appeared on the horizon. A new organization has stepped into the black market in San Andreas, San Fierro. Its name was Loco Syndicate. Syndicate had been established as part of the secret government operation called Contras, of which the main target was to raise funds needed to finance the rebellion going on in Central America. The money was made illegally, however, as the operation mainly focused on supplying various gangs and cartels with drugs. This topic is really extensive. It's also very interesting, so let me just remind you that I've already published a video on this subject. This video will be displayed in the screen for you on the outro. Going back to the main issue, the syndicate could provide very large quantities of a very popular drug, especially in those times, namely crack cocaine. And Tenpenny smelled himself a chance out of this. This sly old fox knew that he had a significant influence on LS gangs, so he could get him involved in this whole firecracker show. Clowns in bandanas would sell bass on the street corners, and he'd be just taking the percentage out of this without taking any unnecessary risks. Sounds like a genius plan, don't it? Tenpenny, without hesitation, cut a deal with the syndicate and with the Ballas. Tenpenny, however, also wanted to introduce the families into the operation. The thing is that the green guys didn't really fancy entering the drug market. I mean, actually, Sweet didn't fancy it because he wanted to maintain tradition. So he was killing people, banging prostitutes from time to time, and extortions were cool by him as well. He would occasionally even rob some shoes for his sister off some hardworking legitimate businessman. But he obviously considered himself as a role model, as he didn't let his green boys sell crack. Yeah, that makes sense. So Tenpenny made a deal with one of the family's OGs and a professional chicken taster, Big Smoke.
Chicken, man, no discussion.
Tenpenny said that he ain't gonna tolerate these unhinged Sweets rules and asked Smoke to cap him. That will create a vacancy at the leader's position that Smoke would then happily take for himself and earn some extra while he's at it. Smoke easily agreed, cause if there was one thing that he loved more than chicken, it was money. In the end, Smoke kind of crapped out cause he didn't have guts to kill his sandbox homie. Therefore, the task of capping Sweet passed on to the Ballas, who, as everybody knows, are complete imbeciles.
Everybody in the hood know Ballas are pussies.
So they drove over to Grove Street, sprayed the house which Mr. Sugar Tits wasn't even in, and on top of that, they accidentally killed an innocent old lady. In short, a complete circus. This all resulted in CJ coming back to the hood from the East Coast. Frank, following all this mess that occurred, decides to postpone the realization of his plan. First, he wants to take out any competition that could thwart his actions. I'm mainly talking about the Vagos here, and potentially the Ruskies, who also wanted a slice of the action. Either way, since CJ is now around, Tenpenny wants to capitalize on this fact. He sets him up for the murder of Officer Pendlebury, whom Crash killed earlier themselves, cause he was acting all like he was some kind of a defender of justice. Pendlebury wanted to snitch on Tenpenny that he's been a naughty boy, and that he takes payoffs from gangsters. Yeah. Anyway, Tenpenny's blackmail works out. CJ is afraid that Tenpenny's gonna put him in jail, and that he actually is going to set him up for the murder of this Pendlebury guy. To avoid that, he agrees to do anything Tenpenny asks him to do. During the missions for Crash, as well as during the missions for Smoke, who was taking instructions from Tenpenny, CJ mainly messes with the Vagos' and Russians' business. When everything was finally good to go, Tenpenny wanted to carry out his genius plan. First of all, however, he had to get rid of Mr. Candyfloss. Thus, yet another trap has been set up for Sweet. Eventually, the whole ambush was professionally screwed up by the Ballas, but at least Tenpenny managed to put Sweet into a cell for good. Frank, in order to minimize the risks that CJ will try something, drives him to the countryside and orders him to stay away from Los Santos. Otherwise, Mr. Sugartits is about to meet Mr. Sugar Daddy in jail, only that instead of shopping sprees, he's gonna get shower sprees. In terms of what's going on at LS, Smoke takes over the families. The plan has worked out brilliantly. Now, Tenpenny could just sit back and watch the money roll. And from time to time, send CJ to kill some other pseudo-heroes that wanted to snitch on him. You know how it is. On one hand, Tenpenny has played it all perfectly. Gangsters stopped running up and down the streets with their glizzies spraying at anybody who wore a different color shirt, all because they were making good money together. Other gangs, like the Aztecs and the Ruskies, were so weak that they wouldn't dare to try anything, because they would quickly get mashed up and sent back to their respective home countries in body bags. The problem was that half the city were drug addicts, which motivated some people to become these pseudo-heroes and save the situation. So, in short, we're at the point in which Tenpenny constantly had to eliminate snitch after snitch. He obviously often used CJ to deal with his problems. First of all, the mission called Badlands, in which CJ kills the Fed's witness who wanted to testify against Tenpenny. Then we've got the 555 We Tip mission, where CJ plants 2 tons of Mary in the car belonging to a certain DA that was investigating the policeman. Sometime later, there's the Snail Trail mission, in which CJ gets rid of some journalists that was writing things in his articles that didn't particularly suit Crash's book. In this quest, Carl also kills a certain reporter that was digging up dirt on Pulaski. Apart from that, we have the mission called Misappropriation, where CJ this time goes to cap some government agents and steals the files that probably contain some evidence incriminating Tenpenny and co. We also got some madness going on in the High Noon mission. It turns out that Jimmy Hernandez also turns out to be a rat. What's even more interesting is that CJ, during that mission, out of nowhere, decides to hang Pulaski by his genitals. All of a sudden, he no longer fears that Tenpenny will introduce his brother to Mr. Sugar Daddy in prison. That actually kind of makes sense, as from a certain point in the story, Torino has become CJ's guarantee that Sweet is safe. What's weird is that Torino has already been protecting Sweet for some time now, and CJ nonetheless was running around handling Tenpenny's dirty work. But yeah, anyway, Tenpenny is left on his own. Plus, he's finished, because internal affairs are close to charging him for all he's done. After all, Jimmy, who was with Crash almost all the time, was fully aware of the shams his colleagues were conducting. And knowing that Hernandez squealed to the IA about all this, we may venture a guess that Tenpenny was he was in some proper trouble. Because of this whole snitch hunting thing, Tenpenny didn't even have time to control his own operation. That resulted in Smoke taking over this circus. He united all LS gangs and the Rifas from San Fierro and built his own factory, thereby cutting the cord with the local syndicate that was anyway destroyed by CJ. This way, Smoke also broke free from Tenpenny, who couldn't even react to it as he was too busy running from IA. At the end of the game, Tenpenny hired some Hogwarts graduate lawyer that somehow managed to clear the policeman of all charges.
In light of the lack of evidence against my client, the district attorney's office has seen fit to drop all charges.
What?
I personally must admit that the justice system in GTA SA World was doing an amazing job. So Tenpenny knew that he had to get out of the city before he gets mashed up on the streets by some angry mob. It was quite a challenge though, as Tenpenny's wallet was rather empty. Tenpenny decided to capitalize on the fact that CJ will want to break into Smoke's crib to cap him there. The policeman would then just follow him in there, steal a bit of Smoke's money, and at the end, he would whack CJ as well. After that, he would get on a plane to Jamaica, and that would be the last anyone saw of him. However, he forgot that he's dealing with an invincible psychopath in CJ, and eventually, he got what he had coming to him. To summarize all this, Tenpenny at first made a top G plan that he carried out very well. Later, however, he lost control of his operation when one of his colleagues, Jimmy Hernandez, turned out to be a rat. Jimmy is one of the most underrated characters in the game. Plus, there was one additional problem, CJ. And this is actually mad, because Tenpenny had CJ running errands for him throughout the whole game. CJ didn't even resist and agreed to do everything without a problem. And in the end, Tenpenny disregarded CJ, and that proved to be his biggest mistake. To find out more about the topics revolving around today's subject, check out the video on the left about the Contras operation, and the one on the right about Hernandez and Pendlebury. Meanwhile, I'm saying goodbye. Take care and see you soon.